Overwatch is now 1 year old. Well, it's been for a couple of months. I was actually supposed to make this video back when it was more topical, but I ended up scrapping it. Good thing I did, because I almost gave it a favorable review. Shortly after, I got disillusioned with the game again, and I haven't really touched it since. Anyway, I've still got the footage for the video, so I might as well finish it. So here we go. It's yet another Overwatch video. I swear I've got some sort of a Stockholm syndrome for this game. I bought it against my better judgment because, unfortunately, overall it really was the least worst high TTK shooter on the market. And I keep coming back to it because that somehow still holds true. There are some great characters here, both mechanically and characteristically, stuck in the worst fucking video game. Some of the most fun gameplay on the market being held back by some truly awful gameplay. Wasted potential is what it is. I don't think I've talked about the actual good parts of this game before. I tend to be a bit of a fault finder in my criticism. This isn't because I can't enjoy things, but rather because I think it's more productive to focus on problems and their solutions when they exist, rather than just keep repeating how great things are like some pathetic yes man. Anyway, good parts of Overwatch. I think they did really well on their no bullshit approach to basic mechanics. This is a rare example of good streamlining. They took what's core to FPS games and implemented it remarkably well, and didn't just blindly include all the extraneous baggage of the genre. For instance, you won't find mechanics like jumping inaccuracy or movement inaccuracy in Overwatch. There are no pointless movement acceleration and deceleration mechanics that make you feel like you're moving through tar. There is no forced iron sights to sprinting where they don't belong. Other games like Dirty Bomb carry all this baggage just because they think it's part of being an FPS, and they suffer from it. Overwatch is a breath of fresh air in the stale FPS space. The game also has great mechanical diversity. There is a bit of something for everyone here. Personally, I really like fast objective-based team shooters like this, but I could never get into TF2 because none of the characters appealed to me. TF2 had you choose from like either projectiles or a shotgun. Everything else was a sidearm. Personally, I like accurately shooting people in the face with bullets, and TF2 felt lacking in that department. Overwatch, on the other hand, has characters that appeal to me more than any other FPS this decade. And I guess I have to also commend it on how popular it is, because even though a million flies can be wrong, FPS as a genre has lost a lot of ground to MOBAs and MMOs and whatnot in recent years, and was in a sore need of new players. New players are the lifeblood of any multiplayer game. The reason nobody likes Quake is that only die-hard nerds like Quake. Overwatch has really succeeded in that sense. Part of it is probably solely because it's a Blizzard title, but it does have actual merits too. They've addressed some of the complaints I had when the game launched. They actually nerfed ultimates across the board by giving them longer cooldowns. They are still kind of really important, but it's a bit less of a shitfest now. They removed hero stacking, and while I had my doubts at first, it actually made the game better. As for the balance, well, there is both good and bad here. The good news is that they are not afraid to make balance changes that aren't just the reduced damage by 3% kind. Many characters have gotten small but meaningful mechanical changes. They even gave Symmetra a complete rework. Bad news is that they are still doing that thing where they completely got a character with nerfs. Roadhog is the latest victim of this. They removed his ability to one-shot people with the hook and gave him nothing in return, so now he's just kind of really worthless. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had no love for Roadhog, as you will probably know if you watched that one video I made where I complained about him, but this is just completely the wrong approach to balance. When you only have 20 odd characters and each of them sits in a unique niche, you can't just go deleting them from the game like that. Which segues us into the territory of shit I really don't like. The map design is awful. Like, around release I thought the map design was just kind of mediocre, but now I think it's the single worst flaw of the game. There is really nothing new to say about it that I haven't already been saying since launch. The choke points are horrible, sightlines and cover are poorly thought out, and there is just not enough maps. Seriously, there have been 3 mainline maps since launch. What's worse, none of them break the mold of the existing maps in a meaningful way. They don't bring anything new to the table, suffering from just the same flaws and shortcomings as the launch lineup. At least Oasis is one of the better King of the Hill maps, but it still doesn't really do anything new or interesting. What is interesting is that they have managed to completely turn the map balance and enjoyability upside down compared to launch, at least if you ask me. I used to hate King of the Hill, but nowadays it's the only good game mode because it's way more lenient on team compositions. The other game modes only have a handful of characters that work, and they force you to run the same strategy every single game. But King of the Hill allows for comparatively diverse team compositions and tactics, at least on pub servers. Unfortunately for the game, you still can't choose what map or game mode you want to play when you queue up, which means that most of the time you will be having a lousy time playing garbage fucking game modes on garbage fucking maps. Oh, also, interesting fact, they haven't made a single actual geometric change to any of the original maps since launch. I guess that would be admitting that they are not perfect. All the cheap, low counterplay mechanics are also still there. The game is full of those. I've complained about this before and not much has changed. Well, except for how they completely deleted Roadhog from the game after a full year of constant casual whine. Personally, I was satisfied with them removing his ability to hook you from behind a corner, but I guess Kaplan wasn't. Anyway, there is a lot of things in Overwatch that have no real counterplay. Like how you can wipe the floor with the enemy team, but then you fail to find their Mercy and she flies out of the spawn and revives them all. That actually used to have some modicum of counterplay because you could kill Mercy mid-animation, but they actually removed that. She's immortal while casting her ult now. Then there's how they try to baby the player base, like how there is still no scoreboard so you can't properly see your performance relative to the rest of your team. I bet they omitted it in a vain attempt to make players less toxic, but clearly it hasn't worked. Ranked is so full of gay babies, it's actually making me miss League of Legends. It was really bad in the spring and earlier this summer. Virtually every other game would have someone intentionally trying to lose. And this was completely Blizzard's fault because, believe it or not, this was not actually a bannable offense. Intentionally losing games was a-okay so long as you did not talk about it in chat. If you did talk about it in chat, you would get punished. They would give you a chat mute. A fucking chat mute for disruptive gameplay actions. They apparently did finally get around to fixing that, and griefing is now grounds for a ban. I don't know if it worked because I haven't played ranked since then. I would imagine things were at least marginally better now. In conclusion, I think most of the criticism I had for this game back around launch is still valid now. In my last video on Overwatch, I said that the game is either a flawed masterpiece or a completely irredeemable steaming pile of shit. And I mean, it's kind of both, really. It could be a really good game if they fixed the handful of major flaws it has. But this is Blizzard and they will never fix those issues, so it's also irredeemably shit. Which is a damn shame because my waifus Widow, Soldier and McCree are stuck in this awful fucking game. And there is really nothing else on the market that is quite as good as the good parts of Overwatch.